Hello and welcome again to Money Tips. It's Charles Kelly. Lots been happening today, so I'll dispense with all the preliminary stuff. There's been so much happening today. Every time you switch on the TV, Boris Johnson is on there, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, or one of the ministers announcing things. You've probably already heard that schools are going to be closed down in the UK. This follows in line with other countries. Initially, the government said this would not be a good thing, but then people keep saying, "Why don't you close down the schools? Why don't you close down the schools?" So they close them down. You've even got people in these question and answer situations at these prime ministers' briefings in Downing Street, which is increasingly the way they announce policies. They don't announce it in Parliament anymore. They have these presidential style briefings that started with, I think, Tony Blair, and you've got these journalists saying, "Oh, but why don't we bring in more tougher legislation to stop people going out on the streets?" I think it was something called Beth, somebody from Sky News, said, "People are out in the streets in the bars of London. Why don't we bring in tougher measures?" It's almost like there are stool pigeons there to feed the government questions. So the government say, "Well, actually, we are considering these tougher measures. Yes, we might even bring those in." And this is. It all seems to be I'm getting into conspiracy theories. I'm getting into David Icke territory here, but it does seem very strange. And I've been seeing this for the last couple of weeks, the way that the ministers are talking about this is unprecedented in peacetime. Remember the word peacetime? Then they say this is like a war situation. Donald Trump saying this is the invisible enemy, the invisible enemy. He said, but we can fight the invisible enemy with not the invisible man, but with something else. But this kind of talk leads me to believe they're going to bring in a kind of a martial law situation. And I've heard rumours from several people today that something's going to be happening on Friday. I don't know what. Maybe there'll be some sort of lockdown. We know that the schools will be closing, apart from children of key workers. I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, you're going to sort of say, well, all you kids, you've got to go home, but you've got to stay because your mum's a nurse or your mum's a frontline worker. They keep talking about protecting the NHS. So that, presumably the schools will be forced to stay open for those kind of key workers. So that's been happening. Now, how are they going to enforce these rules? Well, I've heard two rumours today of people seeing troops on the move, soldiers on the move coming down the motorways, and one was just not so long ago where it was troops are lying, where they go in these massive convoys all at 50 miles an hour with their lights on. They took a photo of it, and they're heading down the A10 towards London, or I don't know which way they're heading on the A10, but they're obviously on the move. Now, where did I get this from? Not the media, but social media, because social media is becoming the media now. The media, the mainstream media, tell us what the government wants us to hear. You have to listen to social media to see what's really going on, because people will see things and say, look, there's a massive queue here, or this is happening, or that's happening. You hear it first on social media. I know Trump uses things like, oh, it's fake news, but sometimes the social media is the real news, because it's coming directly from the people. It's not filtered through the mainstream media and the government. For instance, like there's been riots and demonstrations going on in Paris for the last year, and have we heard about it on the BBC? No, we've heard nothing. And yet a friend of mine in Paris has said, this is terrible here. And I said, what do you mean? And this is a few months ago. He said, well, nothing's happening. Everything's kind of at a standstill here, because the channels like the BBC don't want to sort of say anything that might upset the European Union. I think that's what it's all about. They don't want to show that Europe is falling apart. Now, we've also got situations where so-called free movement of people around Europe has been sort of stopped now. You've got Austria blocking Romanians trying to get home. You've got borders being closed between Spain and Portugal, which was never the case even before the European Union. So what happened to free movement? It's just stopping. Now, I think that troops are on their way, and we'll see troops on the streets, but I could be wrong on this. I hope I'm wrong. And we'll see an enforcement of some sort of lockdown. That's the feeling I get, because the way they're talking, they're kind of leading us towards that. Now, they announced also that there's help for business, and this package, but business people are saying, well, where is it coming from? How do I find this out? They said there was going to be an interest-free loan for people from banks, but when people go to their banks, or somebody interviewed on the TV today, they said, yeah, the bank said, yeah, we'll give you a loan at 18%. Thanks very much, HSBC. Base rate's 0.25%, bank loan 18%. That's 17.5% markup, which is ridiculous. Also, I've heard from my own mortgage broker. I said, I've got a mortgage that needs reviewing soon. And I said, well, surely rates have come down now. We've just seen rates come down by 0.5%. He said, no, actually, HSBC have put their rates up. They put their rates up after the base rate was put down. So the greedy banks are holding on to this. They're not passing on these rate cuts to the consumer. Now, I could be jumping the gun. Maybe in the next week or so, or maybe 2 months away, they'll start pulling their rates down. But I've also had another message here from Dave saying he's heard that London is going to be on lockdown. And, when is this going to happen? We're meant to be going up to London on Friday. We don't know. My mum's in London. She's in her 80s. She is worried that she's going to be sort of told to stay at home for maybe up to 3 months. We don't know, do we? So how is she going to get food? Already, the shops are empty. The shelves are empty. People are queuing up at 5 a.m. to go and do their shopping, and after a couple of hours later, all the stock is gone. Well, all the stock that of non-perishable items has just gone. So if they lock people up in their homes and say you can't come out, we've got troops on the street, as is happening in some countries, then where are people going to get food? Are they going to deliver food to them? What's the plan? I believe they know the plan already, but we're not being told, and you only get snippets of information coming out. So people are obviously worried because I don't think they're getting the whole truth. They're feeding us bits and pieces here and there. They give us small bite chunks, right? Small bite-sized chunks that you can, let's feed them this bit first and then we'll give them another bit, because if you give it all at once, then people are going to panic. And I think if you go back, say, a week or two, the idea of telling people you can't go out would have been, shouted down. People would have said, well, you can't be true. I'm not going to put up with this. But now, as they've fed it through and fed things through, and you've got people in Parliament saying, why don't we bring in tougher measures? And journalists saying, why don't we bring in tougher measures? Yesterday, a Labour politician, Chris Bryant, said, we should give tenants the right to stay in the home and not be evicted. And now they're talking about it. I think will come in. Tenants will be given the right to not be evicted for up to 3 months, even if they don't pay their rent. So they're going to abolish, effectively, the Section 21 no-fault eviction. So that's all great for the tenant, but who's going to pay the landlord's mortgage? Now, we've heard about a mortgage holiday. I'm assuming that's for residential mortgage holders, but who's going to pay the landlord's mortgage when tenants can't pay their rent? And it's all right saying greedy landlords and that sort of, but there are 2 million landlords in the country. Not all of them are big landlords. Some of them are landlords that may be relying on income to live on. Some have mortgages, some have big mortgages. So how are they going to survive? And obviously, if the landlord can't pay the mortgage and the house is then repossessed, the tenant's going to be on the streets anyway. So it's the government's responsibility to look after people. If they are homeless and can't pay the rent, they should be able to claim benefits for that. It's not the landlord's responsibility to just house people for free when they've got problems themselves. They've got their own problems. So I don't know how that is actually going to work. In the meantime, markets have been plunging today, despite all these multi-billion pound and even trillion, getting towards $1 trillion measures to shore up markets. Wall Street's down again by 7%. They had to suspend trading at Wall Street. Their Dow Jones is below 20,000, the lowest level it's been, I think, for 30 years. The FTSE, the FT 100 index, is just over 5,000, which that's where it was, back in the 90s. I can remember times in the 80s when it was 4,000 or 5,000, and now it's gone back to that now. It was 7,700 in January, remember? So that's how much it's gone down. It's gone down by 30%, which is a market crash by anybody's terminology. That is definitely a crash. And as I said, interest rates have come down, but this has not been passed on to the consumer. On a slightly brighter note, my broker said, I said, how are you doing? Are you quiet? And he said, no, we're very busy. People are still actually going ahead and buying houses and looking for mortgages. I don't quite understand it, because if I was a first-time buyer now living at home, I'd want to stay there. I don't think I'd want to go and buy a house in this market when, prices, in my opinion, can only really go down from here. They're not going to go shooting up, are they, when we're possibly entering in a long recession? And yet he said people are still going out and buying houses, and certainly people and lenders are lending, even though there's uncertainty over jobs. Now, hopefully, we will get through this, but I think putting troops on the street is a bit of an overreaction, and it will cause further panic and further damage for businesses who are already beleaguered with all this stuff of having to close their doors. A lot of businesses in the high street have already closed down. I saw a hairdresser friend of mine; she's had to close her place down, and she's got a lot of bills to pay. She's got probably 25,000 a year rent. She's got council tax to pay. That's another 12,000-15,000. And staff and a franchise agreement with Tony and Guy. So I don't know how these businesses are going to manage it. It really is going to be difficult for the next few months, I think. And I spoke to someone again on social media in Italy, and she said it's awful here. You just don't want to go through this. It really is bad. So I know the government are doing their best to try and contain this, but I wish we'd have a bit more information, because the information that we're being fed is fueling this panic buying of stuff, and that's why when you go to the shops, there's no toilet rolls, there's no kitchen rolls, there's not even a can of baked beans anymore. As I said, I went into one shop, Morrison's. There was quinoa in Morrison's, maybe because people in Morrison's don't buy much quinoa. Maybe they can't even pronounce it, let alone cook it. I don't know. Sorry about that. Just joke, Morrison. But there was no quinoa in Waitrose or Marks and Spencer's, though, but there was plenty of quinoa in Morrison's. So there you go. That's a tip for you. You want to buy quinoa, go to Morrison's. Or they don't sell it in Iceland, by the way. So anyway, thanks for listening. And I think if you hear anything, please send these snippets of information through, because I think we can all find out more on social media and in groups than we can through the main media. Because they're just feeding us what they want to tell us and what they think we should hear. It's like on a need-to-know basis. Remember, the government is on a kind of a wartime footing now. So I've also heard from somebody who's got friends in the police force, there's stuff going on there they can't tell you. It's all high-level stuff. And there's definitely stuff going on, and I think we're going to see some pretty draconian measures coming in pretty soon. So thanks for listening. Have a good evening. Sorry it's so depressing, but there's not much good news I can really tell you, so I can't really tell you much more than that. And if you're a landlord and you know any more than I do, let me know what's happening, because I think it's going to prove a tough time for landlords at the moment. So thanks everyone who tuned in. Jean, thanks for your comments. Christina, Errol, Dave, Erwin, and Cecile, Piero, thanks for tuning in. Iceland, Andrew, thanks for listening, and bye for now. There's no real big money tips today. I think just don't invest in anything at the moment. Even gold and silver is going down because people have to liquidate. So there's a thing for you. Even gold and silver is going down. Thanks very much, and bye for now.